All right.
No, go on, do it. I know what you wanted to do after that.
No, I'm good.
Do it. Do the porn voice.
No, no.
I'm humbly requesting the porn voice. Okay.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
all right. Yeah.
What an intro. Okay. All right. Let's do this. Do you wanna say hello to everyone first? That's a
sure.
no, everyone. He doesn't want to say hello to you. Hello, everyone.
Don't tell me we just started. What is up, guys, and welcome back to, I guess, PvP for Dummies and Teach Me PvP.
Dude, what happened to this series? What?
PvP
for Dummies?
You was what happened.
Dude, no, we're bringing PvP for Dummies back up because basically I've been playing loads of PvP again. It sort of went on a bit of a break, I guess, when I stopped PvPing. But now, like, there's huge profit to be made here, guys. Now, like, there's more incentive to play it now than there has been for a while because of these big PvP updates, which I think we've both talked about quite extensively, right, on our channels.
Yeah, definitely.
But, you know, the proof is in the pudding here. I'm in my inventory screen right now. I'm bragging here. I've got 600 gold, and I haven't PvE'd or Wild vs. Wilded for about a month now. This is pretty much entirely, almost, from Glory and PvP rewards. And I've probably got about another 120 to 140 gold waiting for me if I just buy these presents. You can only do this right now. There's still gold to be made after this update, but you can only do it right now with these Winter's Day gifts with this new vendor, this Glory rewards guy. You can buy these giant Winter's Day gifts, get a stack for an incredibly low amount of glory, and then sell a stack for, I'm just going on the trading post right now, 4 gold. Which is like a lot to get for so cheap, so little amount of glory. So there's a lot of money to be made here right now. Want to get some people more excited perhaps about playing the game. And today's episode of PvP for Dummies, I want to talk very simply, very easily about how to get a team and what in general you can make that team run. I'm not going to dictate specific builds to people because at the end of the day, this is an RPG. There's loads of different options. There's no one perfect comp. It would be a terribly boring game if there was. So I'm just going to tell you guys very easily how to find players to make a team, how to organize those players into something that resembles something that can be quite decent. And hopefully this will go quite well. So are you ready? Because like you don't PvP that much either. And would you say
I am beginning to? I started because what I wanted to do is switch to another class because I didn't really enjoy bunking on my Guardian. So I want to try something different, and I absolutely love the engineer.
So how do you have any ideas? Like, have you ever thought about making a team or like?
Absolutely, yeah, definitely.
So
yeah.
So where would you start?
Usually I'll start with friends and guildies.
Yeah, absolutely. But do you have many PvPers?
No.
Yeah, exactly. So that would be my first thing to recommend, right, guys? A lot of the time, you've probably got a PvE guild or a Wild vs. Wild guild. Lots of people are there. They might be interested in PvPing. I've ran a few workshops covering some topics I want to do on this series at some point, where I've talked to people about various elements of PvP, people who never PvP usually, and they can actually see what's quite compelling and interesting about it. That could be a really easy way for you to get teams. You know these people probably personally, at least hopefully on some level. You know they're at least going to be fun to play with. Even if you're not amazing flying out of the gate, it can be worthwhile to find some of those existing friends of yours and see how they do. It does take a certain mindset because obviously at some point you want to win, I guess, and it depends how far you want to go.
Definitely. Yeah.
And some people, you know, they don't want to take a game that seriously or whatever, and that's totally fine, but at least try. There are a few things. One of the biggest problems I found with the Gw2 community, and I feel sort of responsible, I guess, slightly for it, is there's not that many videos out there or interesting things that really show how awesome PvP can be. So if you're trying to convince a PvEer how, hey, PvP can actually be fun, there are a few things you can watch, but it's kind of quite rare. Like, Blue put out a video like at the end of last year showing highlights from 2013. I guess I'll put a link in the description. Like, if you've got PvEers who are like, oh, is it really that good? Like, show them that link in my description. You know, these are cool videos that actually highlight stuff, but they're sort of rare and few and far between. But try and get your PvEers, guildies. You know, that's kind of a brain dead thing to say, but at least start there. There's another thing you can do for getting your 5 people, and that would be going on the official forums. Did you know that they have like a whole sub forum? Have you ever like browsed the PvP? How much do you browse the forums at all?
I don't browse very much, but I have, you know, I don't browse it because the stuff I look up and it's just like, okay, these guys are very enthusiastic about the game.
That's a really nice way to put it. Enthusiastic.
Yes.
Spewing hate and vitriol at the devs, and yeah, that's enthusiasm, and it's something to be applauded, right? Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely.
But there is, and you know, the forums, take them or leave them, but there is a section on the forums in the PvP section where you can literally go just to say looking for team. You can say quite openly, look, I'm low rank, I've just started out, but I'm interested, I've done some hot joins, I've done some solo queue, I want a team. Does anybody want to come and play? We'll just see where we can go. I think a lot of people do form like that through the forums, and you can sort of get a good read on how the community is doing through that. But personally, for me, I don't really do it that much, and I've not had that many success stories. But that's another thing too. And again, a link in the description. There might be quite a few in the description for this video. That's the second thing you should do if you're looking for 5 people. Beyond that, these are more effective things that I personally have found to work for actually, you know, getting contacts, because that's basically what you're doing. I guess if this was business, we'd be talking about networking right now, but it's literally just getting contacts on your friends list. One thing that I find really helps is if you're solo queuing, if you've sort of progressed out of the hot join sort of aspect of the game, and now you're solo queuing a lot, you can actually have really, really good results by just, if you are in a solo queue and you find your team does really well, and you might even find that you did really well against an enemy group or a team of other players who you also know are pretty good at the game. And that might tell you something. It might tell you, oh, hey, the people I'm playing with in this solo queue that I got randomly matched with, they're actually not bad at the game. So at the end, like, it really does pay to just ask in map chat or local chat, hey, does anybody want to queue with me? Do you want to queue? Now, you don't need 5 people to queue. This is why this is so effective now, that you can say in a solo queue, hey, does anybody want to, you know, maybe queue together? And you might get no response. A lot of the time you might get no response. Sometimes you might say, hey, yeah, that sounds kind of fun. You only need one person to say yes, and then you can take your games over to the team arena. Because the thing is, you know how there's the distinction between solo and team arenas right now? Since the update, do you know what they did to Team Arena after the update?
No.
Do you want to tell people? Yeah, well, with like the rewards?
No.
Okay, well, the rewards, the most recent update they did. Now, if you play solo arena, you get a set amount of gold for a win. I think it's 20 silver for a win. And you get a set amount of rank points, which is 450 for a win in solo arena. However, if you win in team arena, which is the more structured area, you actually get 1,000 rank points, so over double for a win, and you get 30 silver instead of 20 for a win. So it's way more rewarding to play in team arenas than solo arenas right now. And because of that, you find there's a lot of players who, instead of going into solo arena, they instead just queue up alone in team queue. And it's essentially the same as going in solo queue, but now they're in team arena and they get much better rewards. Now there's a chance that they're going to get matched against, you know, a pre-made team of really good players, but there's also a chance that they are going to get matched against, you know, other solo queuers in the team arena. And the same goes for if you only have one friend who wants to PvP with you. If you've just done a solo queue and one person said, hey, yeah, I'll queue with you, then you and that guy as buddies can go into the team arena and you can queue up, and you'll get a pretty quick pop because so many people are doing this now. So many people are in team arena without having full groups. The game will match you with a bunch of other people. You'll go in and you have a much higher shot at really nice rewards, and that's really beneficial. You see even more people as well because they changed the daily achievements. Daily achievements, it used to just be the same 4 bland things every day. Now if you're like one of these achievement hunters, if you want every single achievement possible every day, you have to play both solo queue and team queue. So you find these achievement hunters also do their, you know, solo queue and team queue. Because of this, there's a lot of activity there. It means you don't need all 5 people anymore to actually get in there, get some of the experience, and get some of the higher rank points. And the really nice thing about that too is you might get... I was playing, okay, with 4 people the other day, and we went in and we got matched with a random guy. That random guy turned out to be pretty good, and we invited him to queue with us for the next bunch of games. And now I have him on my contact list, and if I ever want someone to play backpoint with me, then he comes in. So, like, these are really, really effective ways to get the 5 players for you, and it's really not that difficult. You've just got to be a little bit vocal and just ask people, do you want to queue? Or try your luck in the team arenas, because... at the end of the day, you miss a couple of the really bad maps as well. You miss, like, Spirit Watch and you miss Skyhammer. And in general, it's just going to be a good time. There are other things in game that I think maybe people should be avoiding. The LFG tool came out, you remember, with the quarter update?
Yeah.
It's okay for PvE. I don't think it really works very well for PvP. I probably shouldn't be saying that because that's just going to make the issue worse. But I don't know really how much luck you're going to have, you know, trying to PvP with the LFG tool. Not many people in the community do it, but I guess it is an option if you want. And the other thing as well is you don't have to ask at the end of like matches whether people want to queue with you. You can actually ask in Heart of the Mists as well. You guys might not know, but there are sort of like designated servers for PvP in this game, like community designated. But if you want to find people, if you're on the North American servers, you can guest to Anvil Rock. And in the Anvil Rock Heart of the Mist, you will find tons and tons of players, loads of them. And in there, you can ask whether you want to then have people that can group up with. And you'll probably have more effect doing that than if you were, say, in the Emery Bay Heart of the Mist, which is empty most of the time. There are some other servers as well, because the community's grown a bit. Like Jade Quarry tends to be quite full on NA. And the EU equivalent as well, I believe, is Desolation. So, like, if you guest to those servers, you can ask in Heart of the Mist. And it's actually really easy to find people. If you want a little story, I guess, as well, about how I got into actually team arenaing, it was through hot joins, not regular hot joins. I was, like, frequenting dueling servers. When I very first came to PvP, Signet Elementalist is not a good build. It's not. Maybe it's got some use and nobody's really looked at it, especially recently because of a few updates, but it's not great. But I was running a Signet Ellie, and it was a really strong 1v1 spec, and I kept hanging about these 1v1 servers, beating people, and in the end I drew the attention of just like one guy who was like, hey, I've got a team, do you want to play? And it went from there, you know. So if you impress people in 1v1 servers are quite cool because there's a lot more communication going on, a lot less zerging. You know, you're talking to people, you're watching stuff, and there's much more of a community there. So these are options, you know, for you to actually find people to play with, and you should get into, you know, some actual groups pretty quick. So yeah, that's sort of the first half of the video that I wanted to talk about, that it's really not that difficult, and those are some of your best options. For the second half, I want to talk about, now that we've got these 5 players, what exactly are we going to do with them so we can be competent? If you guys aren't familiar with the term metagame, it's sort of a term that refers to the general builds and things that you find ran by, like, the majority of PvPers at the moment. You know, some stuff is really strong, some stuff is really weak, and the metagame sort of describes all of the strong stuff. If you're just coming from PvE and you love playing your Signet Elementalist or your Signet Guardian or whatever, and you try and run that in PvP, you might be a huge detriment to your team. So you do need to have a little bit of a mindset to be prepared to just play different stuff. If you are new, just bear in mind you're not sort of coming to the scene and going to be able to innovate. You need to sort of learn what the meta is and then, you know, play around it if you do want to try and break it in any way.
Is there any way to break that? Like, I see a lot of people run the same build and they'll like change up stats, but the build will always like kind of stay the same. I've been looking up a lot of the meta for the engineer, and this is like everyone runs the same exact thing, at least from what I can see. Yeah, like there is variety in NG specs, but you know, there's maybe not as much variety as people would like to think. I think there's a good deal of people in the community who say everyone in Gw2 PvP is just lazy and there are ways to break the meta and you can change it. And then there's a lot of other people that say, no, the meta is established because this other stuff doesn't work right now. There's been a huge shift in the meta since launch where it used to be very glassy. You'd see a lot of like 100 Blade Warriors and Shatter Mesmers and stuff. It was much more spike oriented, and as the game's updates have gone through and people complained that condition damage wasn't relevant and people complained that sustain, you know, wasn't particularly relevant and blah blah blah, that it swung now to a lot of very tanky specs, a lot of AI, a lot of condition damage is out there. There's very little glass, there's much less clutch moments, there's a lot of margins for error, I feel, in a lot of the builds out in the metagame now. Do people build around team builds? Like, I've seen a lot of that in World v World, where people, like, run together and, you know, like, for instance, a Guardian or an NG would build according to their team. Do you see a lot of that in PvP? Yeah, you do. Yeah, absolutely. Like, and that's what we're going to be talking about in this video. There's the idea of a composition, and you need a solid composition. There are just a certain few things, and yeah, you can deviate from it, but I wouldn't recommend people do if they're just starting. There are a certain few things that will make your life very easy. We're talking about the metagame. A lot of people don't like everything I just described, and they preferred what it used to be like. I think I'm in that camp. I'm actually running with sort of a team at the moment-ish where we're playing a very bursty spec and actually starting to see some gains with it, but it's very, very difficult to run outside of what's currently going on. A lot of people don't like it, but actually it's a great time to start PvPing, I'm going to say, because all of the most effective builds, and I'm sure all the devs didn't want this to happen, but all of the most effective builds in this game right now are face roll builds. They're very easy to play. Now, there is skill cap, there are, you know, specific things people can do, but the builds themselves
are really, really, really basic to play. You know, you go in there with a Minion Master Necro. There's a lot of stuff that's just, and you know, they're actually effective. That a lot of like Hambo warrior builds I find to be really easy. Warrior, like a lot of warriors I know actually don't like what warriors become. They preferred it when warrior was really difficult to play well, and now it's really easy to play well, and like that skill cap only adds a little bit more on top. So, but a lot of people don't like it, but it's a good time to start playing. You know, the meta will change again, and for now you can run some of the strongest builds, and there's not that much pressure on you, because actually you can spam a lot of stuff and you'll be okay. And maybe I'll get mauled for saying that, but I really do think that's true at the moment with the current meta. So it's a good time to come in. But despite meta, okay, what you want is a composition, a decent comp, and there are some pretty solid things that I think every team should have, okay? And that's what I'm going to go through for you guys. There is a website, okay, and I wholeheartedly recommend this website now. I feel like it's really sort of come out on top at the moment. Into the Mists is a fantastic website that's got tons and tons of builds out there posted by good players that actually work, okay? It's really, really strong. If anyone used to play Guild Wars 1, this is sort of, in my opinion, like the new PvX wiki. It's really nice, okay? There'll be a link in the description. What I'm going to do here, guys, is tell you a bunch of the stuff a team should have. That if you opt to listen to me here, you'll have a much easier time in PvP. You have this stuff, and you're going to really do well. But I'm not going to dictate to you to the specific specs each of these roles should be. I'm just going to throw up on screen a couple of the different classes that can play that spec and how. And you can go, and if you like the look of that, so if I say, okay, a bunker is something a team will have, and I throw up on there that warriors can bunker, and I'm not going to say that they're the best bunkers, but they can bunker. If you see that and you're a warrior and you like the idea of playing bunker, then you know from me that that is possible. You can go to Mistpedia and you'll see it, right? So this should be really, really simple, okay? You've got your 5 people. You just need this stuff, okay? And again, you can deviate, but not recommended. So, number one, that's what I'm going to start with, okay? Most good teams, you're going to really help yourself if you have a bunker. A midpoint bunker is largely what I call, but they're not going to be stuck on midpoint, all right? A bunker is like a solid, he's like a brick wall of sustain. We talked about this in a previous episode. He's the kind of guy that 2 players are going to take a while to kill. You know, he's meant to survive for a long time, survive on that node, hold it in your favor until your allies can actually come in and kill whoever's harassing him. He needs to have a lot of sustain. He's a brick wall. But also, at the same time, a bunker needs to have a lot of ways to support his allies in big mid-fights. The way that Conquest works, usually that mid-fight at the start of the game, whoever wins that, it sort of decides who has the tempo of the match. If you go into the match and you win your mid node and you have close node, you start off with a double cap. That's the enemy on the back foot. You can press your advantage and you can do really well. The mid-fight at the start is incredibly important, and a bunker really swings it in your favor. It's someone that can be on the node, hold it in contention while you kill all of them, and he can support you. He can help you land your damage, and he can pick you up if you die. Very important, you need a bunker. It doesn't have to be a guardian. What I'm saying here sounds like guardians would do very well, and they do. They're probably at the top of the pile. But there are other classes that can run this spec, and again, you can look at the screen and they'll be up there. If you like the sound of any of that, there will be builds on Mistpedia. I can almost guarantee it. Okay, another thing, I'm calling this a midpoint bunker. One thing I would like to add, this isn't sort of a how to bunker episode, but it's not necessarily always going to be a midpoint. If you're a bunker, let me just say, don't sit on a node that's never being harassed ever. You're sort of making your team lose because they're outnumbered everywhere else. The bunker should be rotating to the big team fights. Wherever a team fight's happening, a really good bunker knows how to rotate and be at where those fights are occurring. That's really important. If you're left to rot on a node, the enemy are just ignoring you, you do lose the game for your team. Like, I have won many, many, many games because we noticed their bunker is just AFK in mid and we just decide to take sides. And now we're 5v4, and how can they fight against that? We've said on this series before, Guild Wars 2 is a numbers game. If you have more numbers on the enemy, you win. So that's number one thing. We've got 5 slots, don't forget. Bunker, I would say guaranteed, have it. Second slot, I would also say guaranteed. Make sure you have someone designated for this. A back point player or a close point player, okay? This is the guy that is protecting your home largely. Now, he doesn't do that alone. Of course, your other players need to help him out every now and then. But he's the guy, like, home is his jurisdiction, okay? The build of a player who takes close point is generally going to have some considerable sustain. Not like massive, incredible amounts of sustain like a Guardian would have, like your midpoint bunker would have. But he's got good enough sustain so that he can win a lot of his 1v1s, if not all of his 1v1s. Obviously, that's a big ask. You can't ask someone to win all, but be very good at 1v1s. And also, if he's being pressured by 2 people, he can also survive long enough for your roamers to get there and assist him. Like, home is his jurisdiction, and because of the way that he works, he needs to be strong at 1v1s. He has not only considerable sustain, but he's also got some reasonable damage. Basically, anyone that's got a really strong 1v1 spec is probably going to do okay on close point. A lot of close points, again, like, is the same as with the Guardian. You can't just take close and then sit there and rot all game, because then the rest of your team's outnumbered. To be a good close point player, one of the harder things is not just winning your sort of your 1v1s, but you actually need to roam up as well yourself. You need to assist in the other fights if they're just leaving you alone. So close point not only needs some pretty good sustain, but these builds also need to have a bit of damage to win their 1v1s, and they actually need a bit of mobility too, so that they can actually get away from their close point, and if someone's trying to backcap you, they can get back pretty quick. Some of the most popular, or the most popular close point in the meta at the moment is known as a Spirit Ranger, and this is so popular because it has all that stuff I just described, but also it's got a lot of team support. When it does push to the mid fight, it can res people instantly with its spirit, it can throw out AoE protection, it can drop blind fields, it can burn people. It's really, really strong for team fights as well, and that's why that one is so popular in the meta right now. Again, there's a bunch of classes that can run a spec like that, and they'll be on the screen. So those are two of your 5, okay? Someone for mid, someone for close. If you just have those 2 rock solid pillars, you're going to be doing alright. The last 3 slots are sort of just your roamers, okay? It's a really broad category, and it sort of includes a wide variety of specs. These guys are the ones that are actually getting stuff done. So we talked about, like, roaming before in a previous video. And the main thing, do you remember what I said about what the main... I don't know if you're going to remember. Do you remember what I said the main thing roamers have to do? Why they're there?
To help out?
Yeah, to win the team fights, yeah?
Basically,
like, yeah, it was this thing, like, you might have seen it, but I was flashing it on the screen on the video that I did. Roamers are there to win the team fights. These are the guys that are getting stuff done. And to an extent as well, they're going to be pushing the secondary objectives on map. Like, if you're on Kylo, then these guys are going to be the ones probably dealing with Treb. And Temple of the Silent Storm, they're going to be grabbing some of the buffs and things and so on.
I'm assuming if home is having trouble or they're getting ganked by, like, 2 people on, you know, 1 person that's protecting the home, he will come and help.
Yes, right. So if your close point is winning a 1v, maybe even losing a 1v1. If he's losing a 1v1, then his roamer's going to come help him. If he's won his 1v1 but someone else has ran over, then his roamer's going to come. You know, they're there to assist the close point guy and the midpoint guy. That's sort of what they're there for. And it can be a huge variety of things what these specs run. Like, you get a lot of freedom here. But there's sort of a few categories of things that you need to consider. So, like, you guys, as you're watching this, hopefully are thinking, right, I would want this guy on this spec for my midpoint, this guy on this spec for my bunk. And then you get loads of options for your roamers. Well, how do we deal with this? There's a bunch of things, though, that you sort of want to balance in these last 3 classes. And this is where it becomes a lot more interesting in how Guild Wars 2's PvP works. Because everyone has different choices for how their 3 roamers work, necessarily. And some teams even opt to not have a bunker or not have a close point, and then it gets even more bizarre. But here are some vague things that you guys need to consider in those last 3 slots, okay? First of all, you want a good mix of all of this. If you can hit every single one of these categories, you're going to be doing well. First, you want some form of AoE damage in your roamers. So we're talking about stuff like Engineers. Matt, that's what you've been playing. They're good AoE damage characters.
Most definitely.
Yeah, Necromancers fall into the same category. Any kind of AoE cleave is very important, like, because Conquest is fought on these small nodes. It forces fights on these small nodes. If there's loads of enemies crowding around on a small node, then your AoE is going to be incredibly important. AoE will wreck bad teams because they don't know how to position themselves. They stand on the nodes and they eat all of the AoE that their bunkers also eat, and it's bad. So AoE is very strong in Guild Wars. It was strong in Guild Wars 1 as well. Make sure you've got some form of AoE in your roamers. This is why you don't see teams with 3 thieves necessarily work. There are many reasons teams with 3 thieves don't work, but the fact that thieves are mostly single target spike is one of the biggest reasons. Like, yeah, they'll spike out 1 player, and then what happens? All the other players just picks them up, okay? And then they just wreck the thieves. You need some form of AoE, okay? So that's one category you're going to want to hit. The second as well is another thing that you on Engineer achieve quite well, Matt, and that's condition damage. I talked about condition damage in the meta already. Very, very strong. Condi damage is so strong at the moment because you can sort of flick someone with Condi damage, and you only hit them the once, but you proc a bunch of like traits and things that cause them to burn and whatever, and then you can miss them like ages after that, but they're still, you know, getting cleaved down. The enemy can go invulnerable and they're still dying to Condi, while, you know, power specs don't necessarily have that advantage. And all Condis as well have secondary effects that are really nice. So like, do you want to? I was talking to you about poison. Do you want to tell people what was going on with poison?
All right. So basically, you were telling me to do is on my NG, is to throw poison when someone's down. So because they have a 33% less healing.
Yes.
While healing them up. So every time I would, you know, swap to my pistol or my nades and make sure there's poison down on down people to make sure they can't res them fast enough, so we can put pressure on them to make sure that we kill them.
Yeah, and like that's so strong, like so strong. That's so important and incredibly a really significant thing that Condi classes can offer. Weakness is incredibly strong in the game as well, and they get to throw it out. Condition damage is king at the moment. Get some Condi damage on your roamers somewhere in your comp. Don't go full power. Get some condition damage, preferably largely condition damage. So talking of power, you probably want some power there too. A lot of the teams still run Thieves. Thieves are power hitters. They got a bit of spike. Power isn't particularly strong right now. It used to be, as I said, it's not anymore. As the games changed, as weakness became, you know, you started affected people on crits. You know, weakness will absolutely devastate power specs. And there's a lot of things that can mitigate power damage. Power can be blocked. It can be blinded, it can be obstructed, you can just miss your skill shot, you can, did I already say blinded? There's so many things. Invulnerability gets through it. Condition damage doesn't care. Like, if someone's invulnerable, who cares? You've already got loads of conditions on them. Like, so power is a lot weaker, but it does have some opportunities. It does allow you to spike targets down that have already been, you know, weakened up, softened up a bit, and it does still have a place. As I say, I'm kind of in a team where we're trying to do a bit of a spike comp, and it's doing okay, but I wouldn't favor too much power. Don't go in thinking, oh yeah, I'll run a 100 Blaze Warrior and a Thief and expect to do really well, because the other thing with power is a lot of the power amulets are really squishy. Like, if you take a condition damage amulet, you're running Rabid at the moment, right?
Yes.
That's got toughness on it, so which is nice. A lot of the, you know, really significant power ones, they're not so defensive. Like Zerx has got absolutely nothing on, for example. I think Rampages has got just like a tiny bit of vitality on. Rampages is largely Condi anyway. But, you know, if you run power, you tend to be a bit squishier. So you've got to consider that. But it is a category that you want to hit with one of these three roamers. Speed is super important. These are your roamers. You can't run a comp where you're all super slow. You know, the Ellie I play is a heavy power, stupidly slow spec, and this is one of the reasons why Ellie just doesn't really work too well in the meta right now. My spec is completely unviable and bad, and it's because it's super slow and it's very vulnerable, and it hits high, but it's really difficult to get to where you need to be and land the spikes.
No dagger, ride the lightning, and
yeah, like Dagger. There's a couple of, like, Elementalist is really bad in the meta right now, guys. Like, really bad. You might not see me put it on the screen at all. Dagger is probably one of the more viable specs you can run at the moment, but it's really not that great. There are a couple of good Ellies across both NA and EU. I would say they're probably all better than me because they don't run such a gimmicky spec that I run that needs a lot of team support. And that is largely Dagger stuff. You do see some Glass Ellies trying to play at the moment, but I also think that's still really bad, because they just die in like 2 hits. You know, you can set a Thief on them, and as long as you don't proc their Tempest defense, they die. Anyway, I'm getting off topic. Speed is very important. This is another reason why Thieves are still favourable right now, because they can quickly move around. Speed allows you to roam and save your bunker and your back point very quickly. It also allows you to back cap the enemy. Remember, I said that you don't want to rot on a point. If you notice that the enemy's not rotting on a point and they've just left it open, you can go and neutralise it. Even just a neutralise forces the enemy back, all that time walking back on the road to get back to the node, and you decap quicker than they cap. So, like, you save seconds, loads and loads of time for your team just decapping and running back. You know, the really good Thieves will be fighting at a mid-fight, and you know how squishy they are. They'll be fighting at mid-fight, get really low, and then instead of waiting around to try and heal up at that mid-fight, they just immediately look to the enemy's close point, and if it's open, they just zoom over there, they back cap, they break combat in the process, they get all of their health back without spending any cooldowns, they decapped, and then they rush back to mid. Oh look, you know, this is really important. That speed is a big one, so you want to get some of that on your roamers. Some kind of a bruiser character I think is incredibly important too. So by a bruiser, I mean a very durable roamer. So one of the most overpowered specs, or interesting, widely used specs, I suppose would be a better way to call it, that you see out there at the moment is Warrior Hambo. Have you heard of that?
No.
So Hambo is a warrior using a longbow and a hammer, and they're very.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I got whacked off of Kylo with a hammer.
Yeah, there you go. Hambo, stupidly strong, very, very strong. They're incredibly durable, but they also put out high sort of pressure, not in spikes, but they put out high pressure and tons of CC. These are sort of bruiser characters. I think that DPS Guardians sort of fall under this category too, to an extent. These are really strong, like the team I play on, because we all run 10, we tend to be kind of glassy. We don't have a bruiser character on our team. There's a lot of pressure on our Guardian, because we need to wait to set up a kill somehow and like land on someone, but in the meantime our Guardian's just taking all this pressure because we don't like have a bruiser who can push the line, who can get in the enemy's faces. Very important. If you can get some kind of that element in your comp, then you can see a lot of strength, and this is one of the reasons why Warrior is so strong in the meta right now, because it can fill so many roles. Also, you have to consider one other thing as well, the idea of being melee or being at range. Okay, if you make a comp of, you've heard everything I've said here, and you've been like, right, I like this class, this class, this class, this class. But then you might realize, oh my god, they're all melee. Like, you can be in a lot of trouble there, because if you're all melee, it means you're all zerging adjacent to one another on the node to kill, you know, the guard or whatever, or any target. And that makes you incredibly susceptible to AoE. You have no positional play. So you need to make sure you have a mix of melee and ranged pressure. So, like, if you've got ideas for what you want to have, and then you realize, okay, we don't have a Condi class. Well, who do you want to pick for a Condi class? Maybe you want a Condi warrior, or maybe you want a Condi necromancer. Well, the Condi warrior can maybe put out a little bit more pressure, but he's largely melee. If he's on like sword, for example, he's largely melee. But the necromancer can do it from range. So you've got these two decisions, and then you want to look at the rest of your comp. You want to be like, well, do we have any melee at all? No? Well, then maybe the warrior's a better choice. You know, these are the things you want to think about. Lastly, as well, I guess one other thing you might want to look into for your roamers, you can see all of the categories and how hard it is to hit all of this stuff. If you've got someone who can really harass very well at Farpoint, there are some Thief specs that do it. There's a Decap Engineer spec that does it very well. Then you can force uneven fights across the rest of the map, and that can also be a very strong roamer for your team. But they're all things to consider. There's a lot of categories, a lot of things that you want to get a nice mix of, and you can't really super effectively get every single one. And that's how there's a bit of an interesting dynamic that occurs with Gw2 PvP, and that is how you build a comp. You want to look at this stuff and, you know, theorycraft what works well for you, and you've got your 5 players, and then basically that's sort of where I think you should all start. Well, if you adhere to at least just having someone for home and having someone for mid, you can do very well. And then just sort of play from there, I guess. That's pretty much everything I had to say on this episode. Was there anything you wanted to add or ask me about at all?
No, I want to get a team. I definitely want to get a team, because the difference between, you know, having a couple friends and having nobody and just going into hot join is drastically different. If you don't really enjoy it, it seems like you can enjoy any game with a couple friends, but I feel like you really learn the game when you start messing around with builds and team comps, and, you know, have a couple other guys to actually play the game together. And actually learn the game together. So I encourage people to do team comps, because it's way more funner playing with funner. Is that a word? It's way better playing with wooden potatoes than by myself. I gotta tell you that. So he's like, oh, do this, and I actually learned the game. And, you know, if you could find people who actually know what they're doing, I think you have a better time to learn the game if you're really dedicated to learning the game. So yeah, I say team. Definitely, even if it's one other person.
And, like, on the topic of getting PvE players into it, you know, and especially if they're going to try a different class, you can get people that know what they're doing to just, like, spectate. Like, that's what we were doing earlier, right? Like, you were playing on your engineer, and I was just sort of spectating and helping you out a little bit here and there, saying, oh, well, you can use this ability here and here. And, you know, people get better
Or,
rapidly.
you know, just tell me, like, don't do that! You know, stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on how much of a cruel taskmaster you want to be. I was certainly there with my whip.
Definitely.
And
my butt is red right now.
Amazing. So, like, we were doing that, and, you know, that's an option too. Like, slowly the features have been rolling in. I do think it's a good time to get into PvP. I really do. Like, a lot of the ranks are way more attainable now. I've been ranking up super quickly since they changed it. And it looks like big stuff is coming.
PvE and PvP is starting to blend together. You're going to be able to use your armor in PvP, which I think is good. Even though I look, you know, awesome right now.
I'm looking at you right now. You're wearing, like, a top that, like, highlights so much of your cleavage.
You know, It's not my fault. Okay,
I
I
think
like
it
the
is.
shirt. I like the shirt, and for some reason it shows cleavage. It's not my fault that it does. Okay?
Are you a
I like
norn
the
or a
cape.
female?
I'm
Oh,
a female. I'm
uh,
the smallest female I can get.
Yeah, but are you a norn? Or a
No.
human?
No, human.
You're a human. So you could get that shirt that's got like all the underboob going on if you want it to be more slutty.
No.
It's cool. I'll show you. We'll do it off screen. I'll show you later. It's cool. I know you want to see that. That's about
anyways.
Yeah, that's about it, guys. Thanks very much for watching. Hopefully you learned something about comp, about how the meta is right now, and you can actually make some good headway with some of these builds and getting in there. I know I've gone into a lot of detail here, but it really is quite simple. You've just got these categories to go through, and I think you could have a really strong opening, a really strong start just by adhering to some of this stuff. And that's the kind of thing you want to pay attention to. Definitely check out the links in my description. Thanks very much for watching, guys, and we will see you next time.
Good luck.
Wow, that was ominous. That was portentous.